What's up, guys? I'm going to be talking about a very simple concept, and that is simply just how you have, in a lot of ways, won the lottery if you're just watching this video right now. Now, this may not be the case in 1,000 years from the moment I upload it, when potentially all humans have computers. Who knows if that's the case or not. However, as of now, a lot of people have won the lottery by just watching this video, because whether you like it or not, the moment you're born, the odds of you being born in the United States or coming to the United States, let's just say being born in the United States, it's like 1 in 50, because there's so many other countries with larger populations in the world. Now, first off, you might notice that I am Asian, and that just sort of defines more the sort of luck you and I can have. I am the only descendant of my whole family to really be born and brought up here. Now, I'll get a lot more into that later, but it just shows even if you immigrated into this country, you are in a lot of ways exceptionally lucky, and a lot of people lose sight of that. I know I lost sight of that quite a deal of times throughout my life, especially when you just get caught up in the standards with which you were born into. It's kind of like how spoiled rich kids are, like the common stereotype. They were born into a stereotype of all this richness, and because of that, it's almost like they think that's their norm, and so anything below that is bad, and above that is good. So that's why being born into a lot of money isn't always good, and that's honestly a philosophy that Bill Gates and Warren Buffett hold. Warren Buffett is dedicating 99% of his money to philosophical and philanthropic topics. And I believe Bill is doing something similar by the time he dies. And so it does make sense, because a lot of these people, they just get caught up in this sort of eloquent lifestyle. And even if you're not a billionaire, even if you're not born in a rich family, even if you're just middle class, I mean, look at, I believe the average annual income per year is under $500 per month, which by American standards, it's very, very low. So I trust a lot of people watching this video will eventually end up with a job that is above that. So you have to constantly congratulate yourself for winning the lottery in many ways, and stop comparing yourself to all these people who are just in that 0.001% of the world, who are filthy rich and showing off all their money. In fact, I find it really cool that the most richest people in the world, Warren Buffett being one of them for several decades, lives his life in many ways like a minimalist. The house he bought is the same one apparently that he bought 40 years ago when he wasn't making that much money, and he still lives in that one to this day. He bought about 10 years ago, 10 to 20 years ago, and apparently it's still the car he uses. Why? Because for him, it gets him from point A to point D, or point A to point C, and that's all that really matters. I mean, that's something I have agreed with for quite a long time. I never really understood the Ferrari Lamborghini stuff. Sure, it looks really, really cool, and I do admire how it looks for sure, but quite honestly, let's be real here. You're not going to be traveling at 170 miles per hour wherever you go. In fact, you're pretty much risking your life. I mean, the chances of you dying via car are so much higher. It's very, very high compared to the chances you die via airplane. And yeah, it's very, 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 very dangerous. And I'm being a stickler here. I mean, it's like Buffett, Bill Gates. They aren't the flashy type, whereas there are people in the media who are rappers or singers, and they make a lot. But compared to Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, not even close, not even close. And yet, they're the ones showing off all their glamour and stuff. whereas the ones who could sort of over dominate them tremendously, like Bill Gates, who could probably buy 50 of whatever Chris Brown is driving, they don't do that. And so back to my original point, I came from a sort of, I came from China, obviously, and so my family, my dad's family was pretty huge, and this was before the sort of one-child rule was in China. So parents, which were my grandparents, they had about they had 7 or 8 children. My dad being in the smack dab middle, and so a lot of these people who I call my aunts and uncles, they had children themselves, and by that time the one-child rule was implemented. But if it had not been, I mean, I would have had like 30, 40 cousins. But since it was, each of my uncles and aunts only have one cousin, and only have one son or daughter, and all of them sort of just they live in China. Everyone lives in China except for my dad and my mom. And so in that sense, we were very, very fortunate, because I had just more opportunity in terms of just wealth. Like, I was on a different level on every aspect, from just toiletries, using the toilet, to food, to living conditions, etc., etc. And that's saying something, because our family was apparently the top 1% of the village at the time, or my grandparents. And so at the time, like, we were living in like the top 1% of the village and town we lived in. We were like the wealthy. And so I was sort of like the cream of the crop, you could say, who just lucked out even further. And so the story goes, my dad, he came to America, and I think he had some sort of like student visa or something, and my mom came from the exact same area, same like rural area. They actually went to the same middle school, but my mom graduated the year, like, my mom was graduating the year my dad started that middle school. But long story short, they met up in my college, which is the same college I'm going to now. And it's crazy, because they came from the opposite side of the world, not knowing, growing up same area, and then for some strange reason, by chance, they meet up for the first time at my college in the United States, which is quite strange. And if you look at it from a biological standpoint, not too ideal, because an organism from a species usually wants to differentiate and meet organisms of varying traits to diversify themselves and produce more sort of survivable traits in their offspring by breeding two differing individuals. And yeah, I'm getting pretty nerdy here, but long story short, you want to sort of breed with someone different than you if you want your offspring to survive in the wild, which is not what happened. Anyhow, so I'm the culmination of that, and I could say I lucked out. My dad and my mom both came here with like very little money, and my dad was worse off. I believe he had suitcases with clothing and about like under $100, like $50 in cash, and that was it. And how did he do it? He was always, I never really questioned him too deeply on this, because he would always like sort of ramble on about it. But long story short, I believe what he did was he like two jobs while working full time as a student, and he paid off his tuition working these horrendous jobs, from restaurant cooker to janitor, and he went from there. And eventually, with a lot of work and a lot of rejections from job applications, a lot, like it's months of unemployment, years of unemployment. He finds a job, yada yada yada. Here I am right now. And so, yeah, in a lot of ways, I am very, very wealthy compared to maybe even the kings of 200 years ago. And that's something that a lot of people sort of forget. And chances are, if you really wanted to see like how my house is and how we are, you're probably richer. You probably, if you're viewing this video, you have a bigger house, you have a shinier car, etc., etc. Who cares? But the point is, I mean, for me at least, and it's very hard because you can, like, for me it's very hard, easy to be caught up in the moment and compare yourself to the sort of better than you all the time. And you know, it's quite amazing how you can lose sight of that. So that's sort of the message for you guys. And nowadays what's happened is two of my cousins have sort of immigrated over, realizing that with the opportunities and so forth, they are better in the United States. And so, you know, they're having a tough time because they didn't grow up here. They don't speak English well. They left their entire culture, their childhood friends, all their old friends, and then their English is broken and it's bad. And it's a hard thing to do, but I'm just quite amazed at how they've sort of been able to do it. Like, I know this because he came from China. He let go of everything. He's starting here fresh with broken English because they teach English in China, and it's tough for him. But he's getting along. He's not really that sad. Because if I had to do that and go from America back to China, because I mean, my dad was actually considering it, because what ended up happening was my dad eventually had to go back to China. But it's tough. It's a tough life out there. Long story short, keep your head up. That's all I have to say for this video. Like, comment, rate, and subscribe.